Good evening, beloved ones, and welcome to Charting Your Course this November 15, 2020. And here we go on another adventure. If you have any trouble hearing me, please let me know. My signal has not been good. And so I've had to reboot, and I hope that will take care of the situation. If not, please let me know if you are not receiving this signal or if it's breaking up. So we know that there are always challenges going on. We're never sure exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. And this idea of uncertainty is something that Leonardo da Vinci said that we need to really embrace the uncertainty and to be confident that no matter what happens, we are going to be able to make it through no matter what it is. And that's what we're dealing with right now. Just when we thought we could take a deep breath, we now are dealing with the whole idea of the Electoral College. We don't exactly know what's going to happen, in the sense that we have fear that those who have been chosen may not be loyal to what they're supposed to be doing. And of course, we know that fear serves absolutely no purpose. Anxiety serves absolutely no purpose. Anger is not going to help. And so those of us who are on the path really must take the responsibility to look deeper into the process that is going on based on mystical laws. And when we do that, that allows us to be a comfort to others who don't have this knowledge, who don't have this understanding. And it will contribute to the outcome being positive, because our thoughts make a difference. And even though we know that, it's still sometimes hard to believe, right? You kind of say to yourself, well, I'm sending light and I'm being positive, but there are just so many people out there who are not in agreement with what I'm thinking. But we have to have that cosmic confidence and go forward. So December 12th is when the electoral votes get cast. And I know there are a lot of questions about why do we even have an electoral college? And because our founding fathers were mystics and Masons, believe it or not, there is a mystical principle that they're working with, a concept that has endured for thousands of years. And I'm hoping that once you become aware of that, it will give you some sense of comfort. It'll give you a deeper understanding of how this system is set up and how the divine hand is moving across the waters of this experience. And I know it takes a lot of faith at this particular point, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to share a few things with you that maybe will shed some light on what is happening and why it's happening at this particular time. We've talked about cycles. We know that we're at that 52-year cycle. that, in, 1968, there was so much going on, the civil unrest, the racial unrest, the looting, the burning, the protesting. And here it is 52 years later, and we're going through another cycle. But this is the thing. It's like climbing a mountain. I call it mystical mountain climbing. I once gave a workshop called Mystical Mountain Climbing to help people understand this concept of that when things seem to be repeating themselves, every time it happens, you go up a little further. You're walking around the mountain and you're going higher and higher, and the road gets more narrow. It gets a little bit scarier, and you may be a little bit more insecure. But trust that exactly what is happening is that you are climbing that mountain. You're going round and round, and every iteration, every cycle, you're going higher and higher. So you know that you have a birthday every year, right? And you don't stay the same. You're changing within those 52 weeks. And so it is with all of the cycles, whether it is planetary cycles or seasonal cycles or human cycles or political cycles, because this is a cycle. Now, we know that the number 4 represents organization. So our country is going through a reorganization right now. Currently, we know the current status is, we know that Biden has won the popular vote, it appears. He is projected to have over the required 270. By some counts, he has 290. We know that Trump has filed suits. We know that Trump is refusing to concede the election. We know that he's refused giving a security briefing. We know he's refused to release transition funds. That's his karma. So for you, it means that you have to visualize everything in divine order. See that transition coming. And you see that Biden is moving forward as if everything is in divine order. He's already working his plans because he feels confident that things are moving by that divine hand. And it's very interesting to see him speak. And I'm only talking about this political situation because it's important that we understand that this country was founded by mystics and masons, and everything they did was set up for this purpose of creating one nation under God, indivisible. That was the purpose of setting up this country. So I'm hoping that I will be able to share some interesting insights with you. I'm going to be referring to a book by Manly P. Hall. You know that Manly P. Hall is the author of Secret Teachings of All Ages. He died in 1990, incredible mystic and esoteric scholar. And this book that he wrote is called The Secret Destiny of America. Now, as a Rosicrucian, there are certain things that I know, and I'm going to share with you those things that I do know in hopes that they will give you a little bit more cosmic confidence. So Manly P. Hall said, America cannot refuse the challenge of leadership in the post-war world. Mere physical reconstruction of ravaged countries and the reorganization of political, economic, and social systems is the lesser task we face. The larger problem and the great challenge is how to set up a new order of world ethics, firmly established on a foundation of democratic idealism. I'm going to read that again, because this was written back in, I believe it was 1937. And this is what makes it so fascinating, is that when we look at things that have been written hundreds of years before, in some cases, thousands of years before, and it's still true today, because humanity is evolving, always evolving. And so you have to keep in mind that certain systems were set in place by the founding fathers based on that time in history, but with a foundation of mystical and metaphysical law. So let me read this again. America cannot refuse the challenge of leadership in the post-war world. Now, we know we've been dealing with lots of war over the past 52 years, right? From the Vietnam War all the way up to the present day. Mere physical reconstruction of ravaged countries and the reorganization of political, economic, and social systems is the lesser task. The larger problem and the great challenge is how to set up a new order of world ethics, firmly established on a foundation of democratic idealism. And so what we're looking at right now, playing out in our country, is a matter of ethics and democratic idealism. I just want to tell you just a little bit about Manly P. Hall. He was born in 1901 and died in 1990. And he was regarded as a sage and teacher who was steeped in the wisdom of antiquity, and was one of the most leading esoteric scholars in the 20th century. His book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, you can read that book for the rest of your life. Well, you can't read it. It's something that you have to study. And you can go at any point in your journey and go to that Secret Teachings of All Ages and find the origin of certain principles and see how they've played out throughout history. That is one of the things that is just most amazing that Manly P. Hall was able to do. Hall was a 33-degree Mason, which is the, highest degree in Masonry. And so he wrote this book called The Secret Destiny of America. And this is a book that I'm going to be studying for quite a while. And it's focused on the often forgotten moments in history that have to do with the founding of this country. And what Manly P. Hall proposes is that 1,000 years before our nation was founded, humanistic and mystical organizations wished for this continent to be the location for an experiment in self-government and religious freedom. That's why this country was founded. Give me your tired, your poor. We've got the Statue of Liberty right in the harbor of New York, where George Washington was inaugurated as president. And so this idea of self-government and religious freedom is the foundation of the founding of this country. And so what we've been looking at, as we've been watching what's been going on, we can see that it has not been in harmony with those principles. So Manly P. Hall really did some serious study and research to really help us understand what the destiny of this country is. Right now, we're concerned about the Electoral College, and I told you that you must breathe because we've just gone through all of this civil unrest. Then we had to go through the longest election result periods that I've known in my lifetime. And now people are worried about the Electoral College because we have an incumbent in the White House who is not cooperating. And so many people are asking, well, if Biden won the popular vote, why can't that just be it? What do we need this Electoral College for? Whose bright idea was that? Don't we need to get rid of that now? We've had enough. But I'm going to tell you a couple of things about the Electoral College. We know that when Americans go to the polls to vote for the president and vice president, they don't select the president directly. And actually, CNN really did a great job in explaining this Electoral College and how it works. They are technically voting for 538 electors who are, and that's a system that was laid out by our Constitution. They meet in their respective states and they vote for the president and vice president. So these people, the electors, comprise the Electoral College, and their votes are then counted by the president of the Senate and a joint session of Congress. So we grew up thinking that the people directly elected the president. We know that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote when she was running, but she did not have the electoral votes for the college, the Electoral College. So why is there an Electoral College? Well, the founding fathers, first of all, were worried about factions and that voters wouldn't make informed decision. You've got to understand that you have people coming from a culture of kings and courts, and so the whole idea of democracy is something new for them. People couldn't read. We just take that for granted. People came here, as farmers. They came here on a great adventure to discover new things and new possibilities and be free to worship, because there was a lot of religious persecution. So it's not like today where you have the internet and you're getting a daily paper, or you can go on your phone and get information. It took time for information to travel, and not everyone could understand the whole democratic process. So they had to elect people who were educated, and they also selected people who were ethical, and they looked for initiates, either Rosicrucians or Masons. I always tell people the Masons are like and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, the Masonic order teaches men how to be citizens of a democratic country. They learn the basic metaphysical laws. A love of divinity is engendered through the rituals. I love Masonic rituals, and I miss them so very, very much. Here in Florida, because my father was a Prince Hall Mason, and I am a woman of color, I could not even join the Eastern Star down here, believe it or not, in the 21st century. But I will see. I may decide to be a little rebellious and stir up some trouble, but for now, I'm just taking the loss. So understand that people couldn't read. They really didn't understand this whole democratic process. So they depended upon those that they knew. And it wasn't organized like it is now. So the founding fathers had to make sure that the final decisions would be made by those who were informed and knew what was going on, who were active in their communities. And that is why the Masons are very involved in communities. That's one of the first things that they learn. It's all about raising money for charity. And they have so many wonderful events because they must be of service to people and to the country. And so when you have that as a foundation, then you can begin that mystical climb. You know, those first 3 degrees are a training school. And not everybody gets past those 3 degrees. But to get to the 33rd degree takes a lot of work and a lot of years. And that is one of the reasons why I really respect those Masons who are able to keep moving up. There is a degree in Masonry called the Rose-Croix degree. And Rose-Croix means rose and cross. And that is an indication of the Rosicrucian training. When someone reaches that level, they begin to get into the higher mysteries. Elias Ashmole, who was one of the founding fathers of the Masonic tradition, was a Rosicrucian. And they were able to identify things like that because I think I told you this before, rituals were written on paper that had a Rosicrucian watermark. That's how you knew the source of things. It was a way of identifying. We still have watermarks today, but it wasn't as important as it was then. Now, even though the founding fathers were very concerned about the voters maybe not being informed enough to make the final decision, they didn't want to tell the states how to conduct their elections. So that's why we have different state laws. Now, you got to think about this. They were trying to form a union, a United States. And so you have to give those states the freedom to a certain extent to make their own laws based on their own people and their own locations. And that's why we still have a lot of things that deal with states' rights. But if you can imagine at the beginning of this country, that had to be done. Because if the founding fathers had not given those state rights and let the states conduct their own elections, then it would have not been a democracy. Okay? So they had to do that. And then there were also those who feared that the states with the largest voting population would essentially end up choosing the president. So even though each state does have a number, an electoral vote number, there was an effort to try to bring more equanimity so that the largest states wouldn't end up automatically being able to elect the president or to choose the president. There were some who preferred the idea of Congress choosing the president, and there were proposals at the time for a national popular vote too. But with all of these issues going on, the founding fathers had to make a compromise, and the Electoral College, they felt, was the best compromise that they could make. Because in the building of a nation, you've got to have that sense of security that you're going into a union that is going to respect who you are. It's different when you're, living in one area of the country that's, very isolated, and that's why we had the Civil War, because in the South, the slavery was the issue because of the economy there, because they were the ones that were growing so much. They needed those slaves to work that property. And they did not want to give that up. So that is why we had the Civil War. So you've got to keep in mind that the building of a nation is a lot of work. And these founding fathers had mystical principles to work with. And so we're going to talk about a little bit about where they come from. So why is it called an electoral college? Well, we know what a college is, right? We know that a college is an educational institution or establishment, and it provides higher education and specialized professional or vocational training. That's what a college is, right? And then our Electoral College is an organized group of professional people who have particular aims, ideas, directives. They have particular duties, and they have particular privileges. That's what our Electoral College is in essence. But if you look at the cover of this book, this is the cover of the Rosicrucian Manual. And if you look at this picture, you will see at the very top in Latin, Collegium Fraternitatis, college fraternity. So what did that mean? Well, this is where the symbolism of mysticism is so important. We've talked about the tarot cards over and over and over again from every different angle. And for most people, that's their one way of tuning into symbolism seriously. But for the mystic, for the alchemist, all of these symbols that are on the tarot cards have been used for thousands of years and can be broken down. So I'm just going to show you a couple of things. So this is called the Temple of the Rosy Cross. And I have told you that the Rosicrucian order, Rosicrucian means rose and cross, right? So when you look at this symbol, what are you seeing? Well, the symbol was created by an artist by the name of Theophilus. That was his pen name. He was a Rosicrucian and an alchemist. But I'm just going to tell you a few basic things about this. This symbol was created as a reminder that for the truth seeker, that the temple and its mystical brethren are ever near for the wise man, who discovers them only by perceiving inwardly the mysteries of the Spirit. Let me read that again. This symbol is to remind the truth seeker, that's you, that the temple and its mystical brethren are ever near unto the wise man, who discovers them only by perceiving inwardly the mysteries of the Spirit. And so mysticism is about making that connection with that higher power. And the reason why mystery schools were created was to teach truth seekers. That was the whole purpose. The mystery schools that were set up in ancient Egypt, you had Pythagoras go there and Plato go there and all of these great philosophers that we know got trained in the mystery schools of Egypt. And this temple of the Rosy Cross, when you look at it, it's quite a contraption, right? You see that it's a temple on wheels, and that means that it can go any place. And you'll see that it is suspended by ropes from the heavens. And that is because it's moved by the will of God. So on our dollar bill, what did it say? In God we trust. Whatever movements we're going to make, we're connected to the divine. We're seeking that direction and guidance. And so the Electoral College, okay, is that gathering of those who are ethical, who have an understanding of what this country really means and the principles upon which it was founded. Right now, everybody's afraid that the electorates won't stay true and vote based on how the people have voted. There's a fear that they will switch and not vote according to the popular results. So we've got an ethical question here. And we've been looking at ethics for 4 years, right? This has been a long journey with ethics. So now you can see why everything got so confusing, while everything was so inharmonious, because there wasn't a sense of unity, of everyone being equal in this country. There wasn't a feeling that everyone was deserving of the blessings of this country. And when things are not in divine order, there is no peace. There is no harmony. Just like it was back in 1968. And I lived through that. I was a teenager in Washington, D.C. when the streets were burning. And I know some of you were too. So we have to put this in a historical perspective, but also to put it in a mystical perspective. So it's called an electoral college because it is a gathering, should be a gathering of truth seekers who are responsible and who are inwardly receiving the mysteries of the Spirit. That's why it's called the Electoral College. Very interesting, right? I'm so sorry because I had planned on doing this on Zoom, but there were some technical difficulties, so I wasn't able to do it. But I'll keep working on it, and eventually we will be able to do Zoom, and I'll be able to share my my screen with you and show you certain things that I think that you would find very, very interesting. I really did try to make it happen tonight, but it just didn't get the right person to help me technically, and my signal wasn't good. You know, it's been stormy down here, so sorry about that. But I'll keep trying till I get it right. So the individual who created this particular symbol was giving a message, and because people couldn't read, you have to remember now, everybody wasn't educated. Everybody couldn't go to school. People who were not wealthy, and the kids were needed to work on the farms, there was no education. So not on our standard, not the way that we think. So we've got to understand what was being dealt with in this country to understand exactly why symbols were so absolutely important. Because nobody would be able to figure out anything, really, to tell the truth, without that. So the artist who created this, he called this also the House of the Holy Spirit. And the whole idea was that the college, the Collegium Fraternitatis, you know, this I don't speak Latin well. I don't know Latin well. But Collegium Fraternitatis was based on the fact that coming together in that college, guided by the Holy Spirit, the right decisions would be made, the right discussions would be had, and that would give the men who were charged with this responsibility to really be pure in heart and upright in their lives. They would understand the need to meditate deeply on the mysteries of God and the Spirit. And that is what Rosicrucians and Freemasons do to this very day. That's really what it's all about. So what Manly P. Hall, because he was such an excellent historian and was able to put those esoteric principles together, he was able to have a view of the evolution of humanity and to write for us in such a way, and I highly recommend that you get a copy of that book. I literally slept with that book in my bed for years, and I'm not kidding. And I had a 50th anniversary edition that was bigger than a laptop. It was huge. It had all of these beautiful platelets of all these kind of mystical drawings and symbolism. And I would, go to sleep. I would wake up. I would go meditate. I would go back to sleep. I'd wake up. I'd roll over. I could open that book to any page and get an education. He was just such an excellent writer. And you can, I will try to see if I can get a link for you. I will post it tomorrow. I'll try to see if I can get a link for you, a PDF link. And if I do, I will post it. And I will also see if I can get a link for the Secret Destiny of America. Because we are just not about doing yoga and meditating and chanting and just working on our own psychic development. We have a responsibility to be of service to the world. And listen to what Manly Hall had to say about the history of this whole democratic process. He said that today's thinking toward a democratic world state is neither a new trend nor an accidental circumstance. The work of setting up the background of knowledge necessary to the establishing of an enlightened democracy among all nations has been carried on for many hundreds of years by secret societies. So you've heard this term Illuminati, right? And that the Illuminati run the world. And there are all these conspiracy theories. Well, actually, the word Illuminati means enlightened one, somebody who is enlightened. And that is a mystical term, and it is an initiatic term. So there are so many different terms that are in our lexicon, in our vocabulary, and we don't know that they have a mystical foundation. For instance, if you say to someone, why are you giving me the third degree? Well, that's a Masonic term that has to do with initiation. To say that, you know, are you on the square, you know, or be square with me. That comes from Masonry. We have so much of this within our vocabulary that we're not aware of. So the secret societies throughout the ages were always seeking to create peace, harmony, and prosperity for all people, based on understanding the laws of divinity and by making a commitment to be an instrument of the divine. And so that's why people join orders. That's why I've been encouraging you to join an order, because you wouldn't be wasting your Sunday nights for years listening to me babbling around if you did not have a sincere desire. And I have used Paul Foster Case's book as a way of, because it deals with symbolism, this mystical symbolism that's been around, some of it for thousands of years, because it's one of the things that people are drawn to in this age of Aquarius, this dawning of the age of Aquarius. And it's so simple, and people are always looking at those symbols, but they don't even know what they mean and how they can affect their lives. And Paul Foster Case was a 32nd degree Mason. H. Spencer Lewis, I believe, was either a 32nd or 33rd degree Mason. I forget now. But I'm pretty sure it's either 32 or 33. And he really brought this mystery school back to America, because this country was founded, explored initially by those who were members of secret societies. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So Manly P. Hall reminds us that secret societies have always existed among all peoples, savage and civilized, what we would consider savage. But every single tradition has the elders. They have those who have those secrets, who have traveled between the worlds since the beginning of recorded history. And the esoteric organization of ancient times were, for the most part, religious and philosophical. So in all forms of government, there has to be that harmony. And we know that the, Native Americans of this country had their councils. They had their shamans and their elders. If you go into the Brazilian rainforest, there are still shamans that are there. And there are different traditions based on the shamanic path is using external things to get you into a state. Smoking things or drinking things, like everybody's doing ayahuasca now, which is very, very dangerous, and people have died from it. The mystic works in this alchemical laboratory because we are designed to produce those chemicals in our pineal glands, in our pituitary gland, our cerebellum. All of these psychic centers or organs produce hormones. Paul Foster Case said illumination occurs in the blood. So those on the shamanic path put things in their blood to give them that altered state. That's what happened in the 60s. Everybody was doing LSD and smoking this and smoking that, and so many people got lost. I had so much heartache in losing people, and we're still losing people. I had a friend who, born on my birthday this year, who committed suicide. It was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. I tried my best to be there, but if people aren't ready to make that move, then you can't really help them. So this is part of the tradition that is part of the establishing of this country. The men who worked to establish this ideal were committed to that spiritual development. And that it really is the foundation of our nation. And we'll get back to looking at the symbols that are on the dollar bill because there's so many, but I wanted to get you out of a state of fear regarding the Electoral College. And I wanted you to understand the mystical roots of this. I don't know how many of you watched Game of Thrones. The only way that I was able to get through this election is that I had to rewatch Game of Thrones to really understand politics. Now, yeah, I used to be a reporter and I used to, cover elections and interview politicians and all of that. But once you start to work on a mystical level, you're looking at things differently. And you have certain knowledge that makes you investigate human nature. Why is it people are after power? Why is it that people are so greedy with money? And it always comes down to how they feel about who they are as individuals and a lack of recognition that they are a soul. And Game of Thrones is one of the most brilliant pieces of storytelling and examination of human nature regarding politics, money, ethics, in not only in government, not only in family, but also in relationship. And this is what we're looking at. And it's interesting that the Game of Thrones was set in that medieval setting. And it seems that we are attuned with that medieval time. The Rider-Waite tarot deck is medieval. And I can tell you that even though there are so many different kinds of tarot decks out there, they're not using the symbols and putting them together in a harmonious way that's constructive with the mystical principles. If you're looking at a particular tarot card and that character is looking east or west, it makes a difference symbolically. If they're wearing red or green, it makes a difference symbolically. Because the colors of the clothes often have to do with the planetary designations, has to do with the Hebrew letters, has to do with the numerology. It's very precise. And once you come to understand that, you'll be going to that Rider-Waite deck. Or I've been trying to introduce you to Paul Foster Case and the builders of the Addendum deck, because it is so precise in its mystical training. And when you work with those tarot cards, you do get trained. Trust me. I've been on that path for 20 years, and it is not a joke, and it is not easy. I can tell you that too. So in the medieval world, they were political and philosophical too, which the Game of Thrones shows. You had Tyrion, who was a dwarf who didn't have physical beauty. He wasn't a warrior, but he had an incredible mind. And so he read all the time and he studied all the time. And so he became so valuable in all of the dealings in trying to bring the unity of the seven kingdoms. I really would suggest you take a look at that. It's streaming on HBO now. And there is a lot of violence. However, and I didn't think I could get past it. I really didn't. But the characters are so intriguing. And the story arcs are just so well written. You really start to care about those characters. And it really gives you a sense of no matter how much we evolve, there are still basic issues that we're always going to deal with. And lifetime after lifetime, we're still dealing with those same issues. It doesn't change. So in the modern world, with political and social secret societies, there is that concealment and protection for their existence. Because there are certain people that you don't want to be able to read your mind or to look into the future and see what could happen. Because if they're selfish and unethical, they're only going to be using it for themselves and not in service to humanity. And that's why it was secret. You had to prove that you were worthy. You had to prove that you were ethical. And that's why the initiations were dangerous. Now we don't have dangerous initiations, but guess what? The invisible masters are still working. And if you are not ethical, you will not be able to stay in an order. You will be exposed. The cosmic goes to work and begins to strip off the mask, and the truth comes to the light. And I've seen it over and over and over again. People who thought because they had money, they could treat other people like crap, talk to them in just any kind of way. No, that is not acceptable within an order. You cannot use your money and position for your own aggrandizement in an order. No, you won't be able to stay because the cosmic is going to unmask you. The masters are going to unmask you. So this is why you had to be recommended before you could join an order. You had to know the passwords. You had to know the signs because there were people trying to get in there because the laws are impersonal. The cosmic laws are impersonal. They will work for anybody. And we saw that with Star Wars, right? With Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Darth Vader had started on that path, right? And then he became selfish and wanted power. He became greedy. He became narcissistic. Look what I can do. I have all of these psychic gifts, and I've known people like that. And they haven't even lived that long. They thought they were all of that. Cosmic took them out of here so quick. Karma does not play. Does not play. And I was just astounded at how quickly karma operates within an order. And I'm telling you this because it's a serious step, and I know that's why some of you are very afraid. And I will say, yes, be very afraid, but have the courage for your own evolvement to move forward, to be of service to humanity. It's all about the service. You can read books and learn about astral travel, and you can go to all these classes and learn different kinds of healing techniques, but that's not the same of being a member of an order. So members of an order are party to special knowledge, and they have certain rites and rituals that are not available to non-members because you have to earn that privilege, and it is a privilege to have that knowledge. I share with you as much as I can. We're now in the age of Aquarius where everybody has some kind of interest in meditating. There's so many apps out there for meditating. And people on Quora ask me, which app should I use? And I said, the app that you should use is you. You are your meditation app. Don't take something outside of yourself. Understand this divine machine, this app, because we are like an app. We are designed as an app. Each part of our physical being has a potential. And I often speak to you about the pineal gland. The pineal gland directs your circadian rhythms of when you wake and when you sleep. The pineal gland produces the serotonin, which then gets turned into melatonin. People are popping pills, that have those hormones in it when they can create it themselves. So you're your own app. You create your own hormones through the process of learning how to meditate, how to concentrate. And that's what mystery schools teach you. And that's why they are so very important. And of course, a lot of people got prosecuted and were given a very hard time for being members of an order. And guess what? It's still true. Sometimes when people join orders, their family thinks that they're doing something weird, or that their mate, who, even though they may have started off together, begin to grow apart. And so when that individual begins working on their spiritual life, then they're no longer in harmony with each other. And yes, relationships do break up. But I will tell you something that I find very, very fascinating about the Rosicrucian order. There are women and men who were married to people that they loved very much. They had an excellent relationship because their spouse allowed them to do what they needed to do for their spiritual growth. They weren't interested in it. That was okay. But they did not stand in the way of their spouse. And I have watched for decades and seen how a spouse who had absolutely no interest in mysticism whatsoever become a member after 10 years or 5 years or 15 years. And sometimes it took them 20 years, which was really amazing. It's like, wow, I can't believe your wife finally joined. And why? Because he was doing his work in that house. He set up that sacred space. He did his vowel sounds in that sacred space. He did his visualizations in that sacred space, and it affected the spouse. So don't be afraid to move forward on your spiritual path because you think you're going to lose your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband. If they don't love you enough to allow you that freedom to grow and develop, then it's not going to work anyway. You're going to be cheating yourself, and you're just going to have to come back here again. And instead of completing some of your mission, you're going to have to start all over again. So have that confidence to move forward with that. So a second purpose of secret societies is that it creates a mechanism for the perpetuation from generation to generation of policies and principles and systems of learning, being confined to a limited group of selected and initiated persons allows a family to grow. One of the things that I really love is that when I was living in New York City, there was a family that had 5 generations of Rosicrucians. And when those generations came together and participated in those rituals, the energy was always incredible. And that's very common in Africa, in the Caribbean, and also in the United States. But I have found specifically in the Caribbean and in Africa that perpetuation of the line. And it really makes a difference. There's a young woman who I used to teach because we used to have what we call junior order. And I started working with her when she was 11. And she's now 40. And she calls me about her children and wants to know how she can help her children, prepare them because they are sensitive. They chose her as their mother. Why? Because she had a certain amount of training. She had a certain kind of consciousness. As a matter of fact, she was very seriously ill with COVID. And so the things that she learned when she was a girl, I said, you just go back to, what you learned. You learn how to tune into your body and use that knowledge to put your body in divine order. You know how to do that. You've been doing that since you were a little girl. Just remind yourself. Do your visualization for your family and your children. See them healthy. See them recovering, because the husband also had COVID. It was a serious situation. Do your vowel sounds, because sound affects healing. This is why sound is a part of every mystical tradition and shamanic tradition in every culture. You've got to have that vibration through the mouth or with instruments, whether it's a drum, whether it's strings, whether it's bells, it's all vibration. And it brings that energy. Even in the primitive secret orders, like the African tribes and the Eskimos, and in the East Indies and in Asia, all of these people have elaborate rituals and religious organizations and fraternal organizations. So it's really an honor to be trusted. When you become a member of an order, you are trusted. So these founded fathers were sent over here because they were trusted, because they had their mystical training, because they were dedicated to being instruments for the divine will of God. And that's why we've got it on our money. We've got it inscribed on our buildings. And those secret societies are still passing on those traditions. I love going to the Masonic Building in New York on 23rd and 6th Avenue. And when you see all of the photographs of those famous people, whether they were musicians or even Houdini was a Mason, the escape artist. It's just amazing to see these people who were very powerful in business and in the arts and in religion were trained. They were initiates, and that is what lifted them up and allowed them to succeed in the world. But of course, all of us have a different mission in life. Some of us are not in this life to be a millionaire. Some of us have already been millionaires, and so it holds no interest. We're trying to figure out how to create things out of thin air, how to use our app so that we can visualize something into existence. That's a different path. But we're all going through these tests, and we're going through a test right now. And the world needs you. I've been telling you this for months because we're really making a major, major change. So in most cases, all of these orders, they were benevolent orders. The members are bound together by a mutual obligation to be helpful and to be of service for the public good. That was the foundation of this nation. And Manly P. Hall says, it is beyond question that the secret societies of all ages have exercised a considerable degree of political influence, listen, usually directed against despotism, intolerance, and religious fanaticism. Sounds a little bit familiar, huh? Let me read that again. It is beyond question that the secret societies of all ages have exercised a considerable degree of political influence, usually directed against despotism, intolerance, and religious fanaticism. We have had a number of presidents who were Masons. George Washington, there's a wonderful portrait, I think I told you last week, in the Masonic Library, where he's wearing his Masonic apron and he has a trowel in his hand and he's just put a cornerstone in a building. That tradition of putting a cornerstone and dating it is part of that mystical tradition, and we will talk about that at some point or another when we talk about King Solomon and the symbolism that's in that training. So we know that this idea of a democratic state is not new, and we have been working toward this for a very, very long time. But there are those who really did a lot of work for us in terms of getting us to where we needed to be, in terms of moving to this new space. Now, Sir Francis Bacon, some of you may have heard about the controversy regarding William Shakespeare not really being the author of many of the great plays. And I would highly suggest that you look at some of the documentaries on YouTube. I have found a number of them that are really, really amazing. And I'll just tell you one quick little story. I'm not going to give you all the details, but the name Shakespeare, there was an order that was known as spear shakers. Shakespeare. That's where that name comes from. The man who was given the credit for that writing was an uneducated man who had no experience in politics in the various courts, royal courts around the world. He could not written a Hamlet or a King Lear. He didn't have the experience. He didn't have the legal background. And Sir Francis Bacon, who was head of a Rosicrucian order in the 17th century, is credited with those works. And there are different secret mystical ways of writing things in code that lets you know who the true author is. And we don't have time to get into that tonight, but I'm just dropping these little seeds for you. And I believe H. Spencer Lewis did this drawing of Sir Francis Bacon, and you see it says Rosae Crucis here. Rose Cross. So Sir Francis Bacon was a politician. He was a scientist, and he actually died because of conducting experiments dealing with how to preserve food by putting it on ice or in the snow. And he actually got sick and died from doing those experiments. Many of our founding fathers were alchemists in the sense of being serious students of nature. The creation of medicine is alchemy. And Paracelsus, who is credited with being one of the fathers of medicine or the father of medicine, because he had this psychic gift of being able to go out into nature and to discover the uses of plants using his psychic gifts. So he was able to create medicines. I believe it's digitalis is made from an herb called foxglove. All of the synthetic medicine that we have comes from those alchemists who knew how to extract the essence of these plants and flowers to create medicine. And isn't it interesting that we're back to that again? That when you go into a health store, you can pick up a jar of tincture, which is the extraction of the healing element from that plant or flower. We're now very much into essential oils, and you can open any magazine and you're going to see something about aromatherapy or the use of oils, essential oils. I remember my grandmother used to go out and pick peppermint and boil it if my stomach was upset. That was my first introduction. Sassafras tea was very, very big in the South, in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where I grew up, and I love sassafras. And for a while, it was illegal because people didn't know how to use it. This stuff is medicine. And so many of our founding fathers were not only politically astute, not only spiritually and mystically astute, but they were architects and engineers and lawyers and doctors and writers and musicians. The people that came here had made that fraternal bond and had that training. And Sir Francis Bacon wrote about a new world. He called his book The New Atlantis. And the idea was the founding of a new nation on a new continent that would provide freedom and justice for all. And this book was not published while Sir Francis Bacon was alive. It was published by one of his friends, William Raleigh. And he wrote the introduction to this story of New Atlantis. And let me check my time. It's 11:30, but I do want to get you to a little bit of Sir Francis Bacon. Mr. Raleigh wrote, "This fable my Lord devised," meaning Lord Sir Francis Bacon, "to the end that he might exhibit therein a model or description of a college, instituted for the interpreting of nature and the producing of great and marvelous works for the benefit of men, under the name of Solomon's House, or the College of the 6 Days' Work." Let me read that again. "The fable my Lord Sir Francis Bacon devised, to the end that he might exhibit therein a model or description of a college, instituted for the interpreting of nature and the producing of great and marvelous works for the benefit of men, under the name of Solomon's House, or the College of 6 Days' Work. It is said in the Bible that God created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. So, the Rosicrucian order is a college. It's a fraternity where people come together to study the laws of nature and to produce great and marvelous works based on the tools that they were given when they were born into this life. Some were born to be doctors, some musicians, some artists, some dancers, some great chefs, some great politicians, some great writers. All of us come with tools to use in this lifetime for great and marvelous work. We are co-creators. And that is why in the secret orders, you are in the college of the 6 days' work. That means creation. So the Electoral College comes together for the benefit of the citizens of this country to cast the votes as the people have directed based on where they lived. Now, they are supposed to cast those votes. For instance, in Georgia, we know that Georgia was a razor's edge state. And so those electoral votes are to be cast for Biden. There have been instances where, I believe it was Michigan, where Trump dropped the case because he saw that, wasn't going to win it. There were no irregularities in the voting. And so what the world needs of you now is to stay positive about this. Do not give in to the fear. Confirm that everything is in divine order. That's what I kept saying all through this counting, right? Your responsibility is to stay centered on the fact that everything is in divine order. The divine hadn't already moved over the water. You see? So your worry and your anxiety wasn't going to change that. But your positive thoughts and your really putting calming energy out into the world made a difference. To send out thoughts of peace and love and healing and harmony made a difference. And it's the same right now. This is what is needed from you in the world. Doesn't cost you a dime. You know how to do it. We've been doing this for years now. We've got a history, right? So you cannot give in to fear. Cannot. Everything is always in divine order. Even if it doesn't go your way, it's still in divine order. And I told you when we were going through this 4 years ago, right? If Trump gets elected, it's in divine order because he has a job to do. And what was that job? All of the masks got ripped off. We saw people for who they really were. And yes, it broke up relationships and families and marriages and friends were lost. But it was necessary to really see who people really were and what ethics they stood on and what their understanding and their actions toward humanity really were. And Trump did an excellent job. And yes, the country is divided, but the good thing is we know who's who. There's been light. The Illuminati were at work bringing that light. I was telling somebody, and I probably shouldn't say it, but I will anyway. You can't kill a roach if you can't see it. If you don't know where a rat's nest is, you can't get rid of the rats. You've got to be able to see. You've got to have that light. And we were talking last week about the dollar bill and about the all-seeing eye. And I tell you, I wear this ring. This is my all-seeing eye. I'm always asking, help me see with that divine eye, not through my little mealy eyes. I really need to stay in touch with those mystical principles. And any decision that I make must be based on those principles and not how I feel like at the moment. It's not a choice for me as an initiate. And it actually isn't a choice for you either, because you have a level of consciousness, and that's why you're here. I just want to share one more thing with you about this Electoral College. Isn't that amazing, right? You would not think that it had any mystical foundation, and there's so many things in our government that come from these mystical principles and can be traced back. So what Manly P. Hall says is that the college of the 6 days work is, of course, a thinly veiled reference to the perfection of nature through art. Let me read that again. The college of the 6 days work is, of course, a thinly veiled reference to the perfection of nature through art. Art just isn't putting ink or color on paper. Architecture is an art. It's harmony. It's form. One of the things that I love in Sarasota are all these old buildings that don't look like cracker boxes with windows stuck in them. But there's a Spanish style of architecture. I live in a building that was built in 1925. And I just love the fact that it's a landmark. There's a beauty in these old buildings. You know, they're not these super high rises, and no, they don't have all of the modern conveniences, but what beauty they have. Sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I just want to stop and just look at buildings because I know that they've been here for a long time. And that is art. Music is art. Dance is art. Cooking is art. Sewing is art. Fixing a car is an art. Can you fix a car? If something goes wrong with your carburetor, do you have the knowledge to get under the hood and fix that car and make it go? I think not. But a car mechanic understands the nature of that particular structure and knows how to put it back into harmonium or divine order. So we don't think of ourselves as artists. This is why we've been doing this series on the Rosicrucian path to self-discovery using Leonardo da Vinci, because Leonardo da Vinci was a Rosicrucian and he perfected so many different kinds of art. He just wasn't an artist on paper or with sculpture. He could design weapons, and he did. He had the first sketches of a helicopter that didn't come into being until hundreds of years later. So these skills that we intrinsically have that need to be developed really come to the forefront when we begin the mystical work. And that's why I'm always encouraging you to please give yourself some credit and understand that you have talents that you haven't even began to touch. And that is the truth. You would be amazed at how much you do know and how much you can do, but you've just never really thought about it. So Raleigh goes on to say that the College of the 6 days work is, of course, a thinly veiled reference to the perfection of nature through art. The 6 days are the days of creation by which the natural world was brought into existence according to the account given in Genesis. As God created the universe in 6 symbolic days, so man by art, that is, philosophy, must create the condition of his own perfection by means of 6 philosophical steps. Now we know that the number 6 has to do with balance and harmony, right? We know about the 6-pointed star, right? Very important symbol. So mystical development is an art. And I always tell you that you have these 5 physical senses. Yes, you do. But you also have 5 psychic or invisible senses. The ability to see into the past and into the future. The ability to hear that still small voice. The ability to pick up a pen that belongs to someone and close your eyes and get an impression or get some information about that person. That's called psychometry. You do that just by touch. And you can do that. In different Rosicrucian conferences that we have had, we always do have some workshops that are open to the public, and it's always fun to have people who come who are not members, who can have an experience through psychometry. Just learn that technique in 5 minutes. And because they're ready to tap in, because they came to that conference, because they were ready to receive some information, they would get an immediate confirmation of what they were capable of. So as God created the universe in 6 symbolic days, so man by art, that is philosophy, must create the conditions of his own perfection by means of 6 philosophical steps. Now, we don't have time to get into all that right now, but I do want to just give you a few more things regarding this college. You're going to think about college differently now, right? So the college, Manly P. Hall says that the college is the secret school, the wise man's house, wherein are taught all arts and sciences, and not according to materialistic interpretations, but according to the divine understanding of causes. So that is why we study the laws that govern the universe. Let me read that again. The college is the secret school, the wise man's house. Solomon, right? Temple of Solomon. Wherein are taught all the arts and sciences, and not according to materialistic interpretation, but according to the divine understanding of causes. That is what New Atlantis was all about. It was a fable, and it contained the laws of creating the ideal state or the commonwealth of the wise. That's what the purpose was. But guess what? That basically is what the United States was intended to be. 150 years later, that vision of the New Atlantis began to take shape on this continent. And Raleigh says about Sir Francis Bacon that the New Atlantis describes the magnificence of the college of the 6 days' work. Here the wise dwelt together in a gentle commonwealth of learning. I just love that. Here the wise dwelt together in a gentle commonwealth of learning. An order is a nation of learning. One of the wise men makes the following statement in a prayer, and I love this. Lord God of heaven and earth, thou hast vouchsafed of thy grace to those of our order to know thy works of creation and the secrets of them, and to discern, as far as appertaineth to the generations of men, between divine miracles, works of nature, works of art, and impostures and illusions of all sorts. It is difficult to understand how this reference to a secret order has passed unnoticed for so long, for it is scarcely less than a proclamation of society of unknown philosophers. And that was the nom de plume, so to speak, of the Rosicrucians working with Sir Francis Bacon. They were a society of unknown philosophers. And for those of you who are Martinists, members of the traditional Martinist order, you can even delve in that and understand it a little bit more. So I hope that you now have a different view about this idea of the Electoral College. You can see that the founding fathers were working with this mystical principle of 6 days of creation. They were co-creators in the building of this nation based on divine law. And that's why God is everywhere. In God we trust. That's a powerful statement. It's an initiatic statement. It is a mystical statement. And know that this order has been established in this nation. This Constitution has stood the test of time, and where there was a necessity to make adjustments, they have been made, and they will continue to be made because man continues to evolve. Nothing stays the same. Everything is changing. The only constant is change. And that's why our nation is always changing and growing. And I want to tell you something else. I have been saying for months that you must look at individuals as souls, not as personalities. The mystical understanding is that each one of us has a divine spark, a piece of divinity that is our core. And the personality that manifests when we are born is our uniform. I was having a discussion with a friend who had just lost her mother. And I said, she just changed uniforms, that's all. When you can see that, when you can see that Trump is wearing a uniform, that he is involved with doing the work that he needs to do in order to evolve to a higher level of consciousness, then you can no longer demonize him. And I loved when Joe Biden said recently that we can't demonize anyone. He has shown his mystical development, his level of ethics, because he could be doing some serious name calling, and rightly so, but he knows better. He's a decent man. He's a good man. He's a spiritual man. And so we have to support what he has shown himself to be through many decades. This is not somebody who inherited a large amount of money from their parents, who built a bazillion buildings with their name on it and went into bazillions of dollars in debt. Not someone who had a TV show that was watched by people all over the country, especially in those little dark places, and who loved saying to people, "You're fired." Isn't that interesting? It's a hard thing when you're sensitive to say to someone, "I'm sorry, but we can't use you here anymore. We don't have a place for you. We can't afford you at this particular point. You don't have the skills that we need. Or you've done something that has proven that you're not ethical or that you're trustworthy." And I remember when I was working at CBS, and Lawrence Tisch, who was a big real estate magnate, bought CBS. And we went through like 4 years of not knowing. Every day when you went to work, you didn't know if you had a job or not, because Tisch was cutting up CBS News. Because he wasn't a journalist. CBS was built by journalists. But when the businessmen started taking over the medium, then it became about business and not about journalism. And so I watched so many people lose their jobs, and it was just heartbreaking, because many thought that they would be at CBS all their lives. I intended to be there all my life. I had 5 wonderful years. And I remember I was sent away on assignment with our weatherman at the time, Steve Baskerville. And we drove up to Vermont, and he was going to interview these kids who were going off to camp. And so I was in that part of our nation where you have these beautiful old inns that have existed, some of them since colonial times. And it was just like a throwback into the beginning of the nation. Very, very interesting for me. And I remember we flew in, and then we rented a car, and he and I were driving, and he said, do you think you're going to be laid off? Isn't this horrible? Well, how are you feeling? None of us know. And I said, it doesn't matter. It's, I wasn't saying it's all in divine order then. I just simply said, well, if they don't renew my contract, then that just means I have other things to do. Because what Tisch felt as a businessman is that you wait until somebody reaches that rung where they start to make the big money, then you let them go, and you bring in the young ones who want to be there, and you don't have to pay them very much money. So after 5 years, I had reached that point where it was time for me to make that big leap. And so they didn't renew my contract. And I remember that the executive producer of the show brought me into her office, and she was there with another senior producer. And she said, "Francesca, I'm so sorry, but we're not going to be able to renew your contract." And I was smiling. They were expecting me to cry and go through all these histrionics. And actually, she was so sweet. She said to me, I can get you an interview at a new show that's starting, Oprah Winfrey, starting a new show in Chicago. And I can get you an interview there. Would you like to do that? And I said, no, I hate Chicago. I went to college there. It's too cold. And the city is too divided. It's not harmonious for me. So no, thank you very much. And then that's when I became an independent person. So I tell you that story so that you know that no matter what's happening with you, yes, there is a pandemic. Yes, none of us know what's going to happen. I think it's 11 million people have lost their jobs. I think that's the number. that's pretty scary. People are wondering, well, what's going to happen? There are foreclosures on their houses, and this is a time when you have to dig in and say, what was I put on this earth to do? What is my dream that I was always afraid to pursue because I was looking for safety and stability? Well, now you don't have that. You have no security. You know that now. So why not think about your dreams and what your 6 days of creation are to be? We're all co-creators in this country and in this world. And each one of us matter, and each one of us can make a difference. What's your art? What do you have to offer? Meditate on that now, because we're moving into a new phase in this country. And we are going to have to be ready to be active participants in this nation in one way or the other. But you have the right to give yourself the gift of saying, who am I? And what do I have to offer? What brings me joy? What do I love to do? When I got let go from CBS, I said, okay, that's it. I don't need to work for anybody. What do I want to do? And I wanted to spend time writing. So it's like, okay, I need to do that. And within a month, I had met a woman who had observed me. She liked the way I dressed. She liked the way I spoke. She saw me coming in and out of an office that I was managing for a friend who'd gone off on a shoot. She had used to work at CBS and had decided that she was going to go off and do something else. And the day before I was leaving that assignment, she said to me, I've been watching you. You dress very well. You speak very well. Can you write? And I said, yes, I'm a journalist. And she said, I have a script that the rights have just been reverted back to me. And I want to do some work on that script. Would you read that script for me? And then write me a critique on that script? I said, sure. So I did that. She loved the critique, and she said, I'd like for you to work with me on this rewrite. I want to build these characters more. Never in my wildest dreams did I know that that would result in my having 7 years of writing treatments and working on screenplays. And she even ended up making a movie in her East Side brownstone townhouse. So you never know what's waiting for you, is what I'm trying to tell you. When you put out into the universe what it is that you would like, what makes you happy, what you think you can contribute, if you're doing that work seriously, the laws must obey you. They must. So I hope that this evening you feel a little bit better about the Electoral College, that you understand now the mystical principle behind having that Electoral College, that you understand that the founders of this nation were mystics and initiates and masons, and that the spiritual mission, the secret destiny of America is to be that place where anyone can come from anywhere and have an even shot. And we've heard stories after stories throughout the history of this nation of people who have done just that. So maybe it's your turn now, right? I keep telling you the pandemic has nothing to do with you. Work your dream. You have the tools. So let's take a little time and do a quick meditation so that we can center ourselves and allow some of this knowledge to seep in. And before you go to sleep, ask yourself, what you've done today, what your accomplishments have been, what your thoughts have been, what your feelings have been. The great philosopher king Marcus Aurelius wrote a book called Meditations. It's wonderful. Maybe we'll do a series on Marcus Aurelius Meditations. It's a fantabulous book. And it's just his journals. He never ever intended for it to be published, but such wisdom and exploration. And he was known as the last philosopher king. That's a great story all in itself. So before you close your eyes this evening, write down what your day has been like. Write down what you would like to see manifest for you during the week. And if you don't have anything in mind, ask that as you sleep, your subconscious mind can connect with the divine mind and you can receive some inspiration and direction. Because the wise are always near to the truth seekers. So put both feet flat on the floor, hands on your lap, unclasp, palms down on your thighs. And let's take 3 deep belly breaths. Breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. Breathe in, filling your abdomen like a balloon. Breathe out through the mouth. Breathe in through the nose. Breathe out through the mouth. Now just allow yourself to breathe slowly and deeply and rhythmically. And I'm going to intone the vowel sound Om to get you ready to go into those higher realms, to activate that pineal gland, to put yourself in a place of peace, to put yourself in a receptive mode so that you can hear that still small voice that is waiting to whisper to you. I'm going to intone it on the key of D. I'll intone it once and then you can intone it with me 3 times. As I always remind you that sound changes the vibration of the individual who is emitting the sound and anyone within hearing of that sound. Their vibration is changed. That's why we love going to concerts of music that we love. Because when we come out of those concerts, we are changed. Our vibration is different. So I'm going to intone Om once, and then you can intone it 3 times. If people are sleeping in your house or you don't feel comfortable doing it out loud, you can do it mentally. And you can always use this sound to bring you to a place of peace if you're upset or confused or not feeling well. It is a universal sound that has been used in many cultures for many centuries. Take a deep breath in. Second breath in. third breath in. And now I'd like to ask you to close your eyes. Visualize yourself surrounded by an oval of silvery white light, like the light of moonlight. And you can feel this light seeping into every single cell, tissue, muscle, bone, and nerve within your entire body, from the tip of your toes up through your feet, your ankles, your legs, your knees, your thighs, the gluteus maximus muscles upon which you sit, up the spine, all the way up to the back of the head. Feel that light flowing down like a waterfall over your left and right shoulders and down each side of the back. Feel that light flowing down your left and right arms, moving through your wrist, moving through your hands, your fingers, and you may feel some tingling as this light is seeping into every single cell, tissue, muscle, bone, and nerve, vivifying your entire being. And smile and give thanks, give thanks, give thanks that all is in divine order. Allow that light to penetrate into all of the openings of your face. Let it flow into your eyes and back through the optical nerves. Let it flow into your ears, deep into the inner ear that is responsible for helping you maintain your balance. Feel that light flowing through your nasal passages as you breathe in through the nostrils, and allow that light to flow into your mouth, covering your teeth, tongues, and gum. Let it flow down your throat, bathing your larynx, your vocal cords. See that light pooling around your thyroid gland at the base of the neck, shaped like a bow tie. Take a deep breath in. Feel that light flowing into your lungs. See that light burning away any impurities or pathogens so that there is no inharmonious elements within your lungs. Take a deep breath in. And see that light surrounding your thymus gland, responsible for the multiplication of T cells, which help to fight off all infection. And give thanks, give thanks, give thanks that this gland is doing its job and multiplying those T cells, creating those soldiers to help fight off infection and keep you in harmonium, in good health. And take a deep breath in and allow that light now to flow down into your stomach and your intestines. And see that light flowing into the organs within your abdomen, your large and small intestines. See that light flowing into your pancreas, your spleen, your gallbladder, your liver. See that light circle around and bathe your kidneys and the adrenal glands on top of the kidneys. Take a deep breath in and allow that light to fill your reproductive system that is not just a co-creator of physical life, but is a transformer of that creative energy that can be used to assist you in your mystical development and your opening of your psychic abilities. And smile and give thanks, give thanks, give thanks that you have been given this gift of possibility And continue breathing slowly and deeply and rhythmically. Breathing in, allowing the abdomen to expand, and exhaling, feeling the air coming out. Allow the diaphragm to contract so that you're breathing deeply and slowly and rhythmically. And visualize that light surrounding your heart, flowing through your left and right ventricles, flowing through your veins and arteries, flowing through your bloodstream, completely penetrating your pericardium, that covering around the heart. And give thanks, give thanks, give thanks for this life force that is moving through your body, that is allowing you to breathe and your heart to beat without your having to even think about it. And now let that light expand and focus for a moment on the left and right hemispheres of your brain. Allow that light to flow into the cerebellum at the back of the head. Allow that light to flow into the pituitary gland, the master gland that directs the autonomic nervous system. Allow that light to penetrate the pineal gland, shaped like a pine cone, that is responsible for the manufacturing of serotonin, which then becomes melatonin and really regulates your rhythms of waking and sleeping. And just see yourself vibrating with this light, and send this light out into the room in which you sit. Radiate this light out into your home. Radiate this light out into the city in which you live. And yes, this light does travel. So radiate that light out into the world. And now visualize the earth floating in space, a big blue ball. And see yourself side by side with others who are radiating that light toward the earth. And give thanks, give thanks, give thanks for this opportunity to be of service. Beloved God of our hearts, God of our realization, we're so very, very grateful to have had this opportunity to come together, to really explore the meaning of this nation of America, to really lend our light to those who are fearful and give them the courage to be strong in the coming days, to help those who are angry release that anger, let it go, and move to a place of peace. We send our love to those who feel unloved. We send our healing energy to those who are sick, especially those with COVID-19. Let our light be a healing light to assist them in their healing process. Let our light flow through the halls of government throughout all nations, because we know that the world is in a troubled state, that somewhere there is always a war, that somewhere there is always hunger, somewhere there's always abuse or fear, somewhere there is always unethical behavior. We know that because we know that Earth is a school. But we offer up our love and our energy and our hope for peace and love and prosperity, and we send it out to the world. We give thanks for all of the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us this week. And as we begin our next 6 days of creation, We ask for your divine guidance, that we may become more aware of our mission on this earth and our work of art that is to be done in service to the world. We're so grateful for all of the love and joy and comfort that you provide to us, and we send it back joyously, gratefully, and lovingly with thanksgiving. So be it. Amen. And continue breathing deeply, slowly, and rhythmically, beginning to bring yourself back into the consciousness of your body. Begin to wiggle your fingers and toes, bringing your awareness back into your body. But take a moment and feel that sense of peace that has descended upon you. And radiate that sense of peace out into your home, so that everyone under your roof, everything under your roof, whether it is mineral, plant, animal, or human, is receiving this vibration of peace. And open your eyes when you're ready. Thank you so much, beloved ones, for joining me this evening. And as you prepare to go off into the world of sleep and relaxation, yeah, you're probably going to be traveling a bit. You've got some places to go and some things to do, right? And enjoy that and know that you are truly loved, you are truly appreciated, and that all is always in divine order. And of course, you know I love you, right? Take care. Peace profound.